Hey, horror fans, once again, it's the Horror Miser Money G, and today we're going to talk about last night's episode of The Walking Dead. So once again, we get these little snippets of the three groups that are attacking a Savior outpost. We get Ezekiel once again making his speeches, saying that even though we're outnumbered, we will not lose anybody. And for most of the part, that is true. They come across this opening where the saviors come out. You can hear their whistling, and they come out, and they believe that they have all the people from the kingdom surrounded. But thanks to some great strategy, Carol and the rest of the saviors come out and kill all the saviors with a nice setup ambush that they have. We also have Aaron's team. They're still having a shootout with some other saviors at another saviors outpost. As I said in my last recap, where are they getting all this ammunition? No one stops and reloads. They just shoot, shoot, shoot. Reminds me of the A-Team when you used to shoot all this time and they didn't have to stop to replace ammos. And we also seen some walkers from the people that killed and were reanimated as walkers, and they're feasting on the other ones, and they're not even paying attention to anybody else. We also see that Aaron's lover, was shot in the gut, and he's trying to prevent him from dying. And then, of course, from last week's end of the show, we see Morales, way, way back from season 1, has Rick at gunpoint. He said he's alerted Negan, and the Saviors are coming back. We have this nice conversation between Morales and Rick, as Morales tells him that he and his family didn't make it to Birmingham, and he lost his family along the way up until this point right now. And Rick said, hey, I've lost family too. I lost Lori, we lost Andrea, and we lost Glenn. And it wasn't until then that Negan had told everyone not to kill Rick, the king, and the widow. And he didn't know that Glenn was the husband, and because he was not there when they were at Herschel's farm. So at that point right there, that's when he didn't know that that Glenn had gotten married, and that's what makes her the widow. But he calls Rick a monster, saying that if our positions were reversed, you would probably be a savior too. And that's very interesting because if Rick did not have the support group that he had with the survivors, it's possible that he could have been a savior. He could have actually ran into Negan. He probably would have felt the same way Morales is now. Unfortunately, it isn't for long before Dower comes in and kills Morales in the back of it with his bow. So rest in peace, Morales. Now, we also get to see Jesus and the captured saviors as they have tied them up and are walking them back to Hilltop. And once again, we get this difference of philosophies between Jesus and Morgan. And it gets to the point where halfway through the show, we see a bunch of walkers tumbling down this hill, and they start attacking some of the captured saviors. It allows some of these saviors to escape. One gets bit by a walker, and they put them down quickly. Morgan chases after the escaped saviors and kills one of them, and then we get more philosophy talk between Morgan and Jesus, to the point where they come to blows, and which would I consider a great fight scene between the two men, and it's left into a draw, to where Morgan says, I know I'm wrong, but I'm also know I'm right, and we can't allow these saviors to live, but I can't be a part of this anymore. And Morgan walks up disgusted. So we don't know if Morgan will be back or not, but obviously Morgan is at odds with himself, knowing that he's now a peaceful man, but he also knows that Rick is right, that we cannot leave any of these guys alive. But Jesus wants to have peace. We can't be like them, he keeps repeating himself, just like he told Tara in the last episode. We can't be like them. We can capture them, they surrendered, but we can't be like them. So we get a scene in the hilltop where Gregory, of all people, has returned to the hilltop encampment, and he is yelling and begging for Maggie to let him in, saying, don't you have any humanity? Don't you have any, whatchamacallit? And she allows him to come in, despite the fact that he was willing to sell everyone out. And we get another scene where they finally, as I was saying before, we get to see Jesus return with the prisoners of war, as what they call them. And Gregory, of all people, is the first one to shout out how dangerous it could be. And Jesus once again says that, look, they surrendered. We can't be like them. The one thing I would point to Jesus and the rest of the people in the story is that we've seen before what happens when you allow a savior to live, and it's come to bite them in the ass several times. And even though I think it is a mistake, I can understand his point of view, saying that we cannot be like Negan and we cannot be like the saviors. But in times of war, it's my and when it comes to times of war, I think the only thing you have to deal with is you have life, death, victory, or defeat. There's no middle ground when it comes to war, and I'm pretty sure, as far as Negan is concerned, if he had the opportunity to kill anybody, if it was not any of the three people he is the one killed, he will kill them. He'll have his lieutenants kill them just out of sake of sake. This is war. And I understand his philosophy. It's like you want to lose your humanity, and no, you don't want to become a monster like Negan. But again, when it comes to war, it's only life, death, victory, and defeat. And I think if they do keep these people alive, it's going to bite them in the ass. And of course, we do see a casualty of war. We see Eric when Aaron returns back when the after Glenn and Rick finally dispose of the saviors that return to the outpost. They fend them off and they kill off the remaining reanimated saviors that turn into walkers. As Aaron goes back to see his boyfriend, unfortunately, he died and became reanimated as a walker, and we see him walk off with the rest of the horde that's in the background. Probably coming to the area attracted by the gunshots. And it's a very tender moment, a very sad moment for Aaron. For those who don't read the comics, we do see that the Eric character in the comics does get killed, not in the same way in the story here in the TV show, but he does die in the comics, but not in the same way. And it's a very sad scene. And the baby that Rick found in the last episode, he brings it outside, and Aaron decides to take it. He'll decide to take it to Hilltop. So I'm very pleased with that scene. Probably one of the best scenes of this episode. As like I said, poor Eric, he did not make it. So rest in peace, Eric. The last scene out of the story when Rick and Daryl decide to go to the Janus outpost where the junkyard is, they get shot at by this kid who got bullied earlier by a savior. They find out that the guns were removed from that place and over where Galvin is. And Rick had said that we're not going to shoot you, we're not going to do anything to you. And after he reviews it, Yara just shoots him in the head, saying that it doesn't matter, he's a savior, he put him down. So I don't know if people will become monsters out of this all-out war or not, but it's the land where they're in right now, and this is the whole part of the story right now is that it's killed or be killed, and as far as Dow is concerned, that's the reason why he killed him anyway. So that was the end of the show. Oh, my bad, not the end of the show. We get one last scene where we see another Walker outpost, and they lay them to waste, and everything seemed to be fine, but they still have to reconnaissance the area. And right when it seemed like everything would be fine, uh, Ezekiel gives one of his speeches. Right before everything seems to be fine, he sees something up at one of the windows. He tells everyone to scatter, and next thing you know, this huge gunshot comes out of anywhere, picking off at least several of the Kingmen, and several of the other people dive in front of Ezekiel, knowing that they're killed as well. So it looks like whatever speech he did will not work. Didn't work, or it was poetic justice, I guess, on the writer's part, because they all survived. Everything seemed to be going fine, but you knew the Savior's going to come back and come back in the vicious way they did. So obviously, when next week's show comes on, we're going to see who lived, who survived, and what's going to happen to Ezekiel's team with Carol, because obviously they're going to be dealing with a very well armed and well prepared Savior force. So I thought this was a better paced episode than last week's episode. A lot of things happen. We see philosophies between Jesus and Morgan. Morgan saying he can't be a part of it, even though he knows he's wrong, but he also knows that he's right, but he said he can't be a part of it, but we don't know if he's going to stick around or not. Again, we see philosophies with Gregory saying that first and say, look, these people are going. This is going to be a stupid mistake, and I can understand. Again, I can understand Jesus's point, but as I stated earlier, when it comes to war, it is only four things: life, death, victory, defeat. There are no middle grounds when it comes to war. And I know some people like to hold their morals in during the times of war, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do in order to survive. And obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with the prisoners over at the kingdom or at the hilltop. But I'm pretty sure it's going to bite them in the ass, as I stated before. Like I said, pretty good episode. I enjoyed it. I like what happened. Much better paced episode than last week's episode. And I'm pretty sure we'll find out what's going to happen to Ezekiel and his team as they now are fighting back against a well-armed group of saviors at this outpost. So, my horror fans, what did you think about last night's episode of The Walking Dead? Did you like it? Did you thought it advanced the story very well? Or do you think this is just another ho hum episode and this is The Walking Dead still being The Walking Dead? Leave your comments down in the comment section below and let me know what you thought about last night's episode of The Walking Dead. Well, that's my video for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. And again, if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscriber button and ring that notification bell. That way you can become part of the horror experience with me, the Horror Miser Monty G. And as always, all my social media links will be down in the description below. I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. I'm also a part of a group on Facebook called Killer Flicks, where we talk about horror all day long. And on Fridays, it's Free for All Fridays, where we talk about anything. Once again, that group is called Killer Flicks as well. Once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Monty G. And always remember, horror rules.